This video was brought to you by the lovely members of my Patreon. And I understand that when you're new and you're eager, you're so excited, but trust me when I say that you are going to prefer holding off and getting to know somebody for a long period of time and doing stuff when you guys understand each other over the potential of you actually being abused. Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. I wanted to thank you guys so much for joining me here for yet another episode of True Tea. We do these videos every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I greatly appreciate those of you guys who come here every single week, ready for a fresh brew of True Tea, especially those of you guys who go on my Patreon and get early access because you guys start the conversation every single week. Thank you so much for doing that. Anyway, what have you guys been up to? What's been new and different in your life? I have been trying to buy new vinyl. I want to pace myself, and I finally got my favorite album on vinyl. I need to get some bags for all of my vinyl, but I'm just so happy to have this now. It's I'm just gonna play it every single day. I love it so much. But yeah, I've been trying to buy vinyl, and that's kind of what's new in my life. If you guys go to my description box, I always have a little wish list, and I've been adding a bunch of vinyl on there if you guys are interested in helping me expand my collection. But that's really what's new in my life. Let me know what's new in your life. What are you guys doing? What are some new things you've been up to? I always love the people who actually do that every single week because, I don't know, I just like to know how you guys are. So yeah. Anyway, we're gonna be having a conversation in this video about fake doms. But before we do that, I would highly suggest that you go to your kitchen and grab yourself something to drink. Personally, I am drinking some Zevia because I am still on my 000 everything soda thing. Anyway, I'm gonna take a sip of this and let's get right into this video. So, I am very excited to have this conversation because I feel like there's so many things that I've been saying since I've started making videos about BDSM where I kind of talked around this. And when I recently made my video about whether or not BDSM is always sexual, a lot of you guys requested that I do a whole video about this. We haven't done one of these in a really long time, but I'm gonna start out this conversation with a disclaimer. Because I know that there are a lot of people who hear this kind of conversation and they have these images of very full of themselves, snooty BDSMers in their mind. And I'm not going to say that that feeling is invalid. I'm not gonna say that that feeling is not right. I'm not gonna say that you don't have any reason to feel that way. But what I am gonna say is that years and years and years ago, BDSM was not people weren't really aware of it, right? And so BDSM was very secret. It was very private. There was a lot of, we don't quite want for everybody to know what we're doing kind of thing. And so people were very protective, not only of that conversation in general, but also of the spaces that they had, because it was very obvious that if we allowed a lot of people to come into these spaces, that there would be some sort of shift and change that would make it not what it is. And I know that that sounds very, oh my God, you have to be part of the cool kids to participate or whatever. But I don't really think that that's what it is. I think a lot of what people interpret as snooty BDSMers is just really passionate nerds who are very protective of their subculture. But I'm, again, not going to dismiss that feeling that some people have of oh my God, these people think that I need to be, Kinky McKinkerson on Kinkerson Road in order to, do the kink thing. I get it. But at the same time, I just want to give context for some of that feeling because I think people coming into BDSM now won't really understand why there is so much of what you may perceive as cliquish, protective, distant, snooty aspect to BDSM subculture. So let's, kind of talk a bit about that. So that's my disclaimer. Now, I've talked about this before, but I came into the BDSM community in a post 50 Shades of Grey world, right? When I was much, much, much younger, far too young, honestly, I had sort of kind of, been a bit exposed to it. Some of the early parties I went to was with a BDSM dominant who had a pet, pet/slave. So I was like vaguely familiar with BDSM and kind of the underground of it because I had been at kind of sort of some of those parties. But for the most part, I didn't really become integrated until post 50 Shades of Grey. And what happened with 50 Shades of Grey is, for better or for worse, it got a lot of people interested in BDSM. Now, we've talked on this channel about how there are indeed people who do BDSM in the bedroom, and that's kind of where it begins and ends, and people have different dedications to BDSM. Some people do BDSM as part of their lifestyle. Some people do BDSM as part of their hobby, right? And a lot of people literally only get excited by doing it in the bedroom with a partner. And all of those things are valid, but what's happened I don't want to blame 50 Shades of Grey, but I think it is to blame for a lot of it. 50 Shades of Grey and porn and all these other things. What I've seen is, you've got, how to say this without sounding like an asshole. This is gonna be a video of me really trying to figure out ways to say things without saying things. But, okay, so these days, right? A handsome guy who buys nice looking toys, wears a tight, business casual type situation with suspenders. Because they often have suspenders, which I like, but I've noticed a trend. He can come in to any dungeon, know absolutely nobody, interact not at all with the local community, not establish himself, not build a name for himself, not be given a title, and just walk in confident, handsome, with nice toys, and be called a dom. Back in the day, if you were gonna call yourself a dom, you really had to earn that title. There's a difference between wanting to be dominant and being a dom. We talked about that in the last video, and I'll get into this further, but the desire to be a dominant does not suddenly give you the understanding of the safety of it all. And unfortunately, what's happened in Los Angeles, and that's the scene I'm most familiar with, is that you've got a lot of these dudes who dress the right way, and they're handsome or whatever, and they're charismatic, and they have the right toys, but they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. And really what's really happened out here is that the doms who really do know what they're doing, who tend to be older, have in so many ways been, in their opinion, pushed out of the community. And when I say pushed out of the community, I mean that to a lot of people who are older and they have been doing this for a bit, the sort of new wave of BDSM is quite alienating to them. And there's various different reasons why this is. On one hand, it's alienating to them because there's this new sort of understanding and all of this inclusion and and like stuff that like I think the BDSM community has always done, but people have become more demanding of. I don't know when this video is going to go up, but I, for example, have a friend who is a pretty big BDSM dominant educator. And he was out here for quite some time, and he taught a lot of classes, and he had taught classes for years, and for a really long time, everything with those classes was totally copacetic and going well. And then he started getting a lot of complaints because he was a heterosexual man teaching his own personal BDSM, approach. And his BDSM approach was that he only topped women, and there was this pressure for him to be more inclusive in the way that he was speaking about his BDSM, but he didn't want to change how he was describing what he was doing, even though it really applied to everyone, because he is a heterosexual dude who tops women. And there was a lot of issue with that. There's a lot of issue with just the way that he was describing his BDSM. And this is a guy who when I walked into the community, he was already kind of known as like a good player, an impressive player, somebody who could theoretically do the traditional thing of, training another person to eventually go on and carry on the dom thing. And he ended up leaving Los Angeles because of that sort of stuff, because he just felt like he no longer could just be himself in these spaces. And of course, he comes from a time where this was all so much edgier and so much more underground. And of course, there's positives and negatives with that thing. Positive was that there, was a little bit more freedom with a lot of what people were doing, right? Negative was that because there was a little bit more freedom with what people are doing, that coupled with how underground things were, meant that when abuse happened, it really got swept under the rug, right? And I will never deny that that's a big issue with the quote old guard, as a lot of people call it, because there was abuse, and there were people that I know who, were in this terrible sort of situation of going through abuse, but not being able to talk about it, and then also keeping it to themselves because they didn't want to compromise the community, right? And so again, positives, negatives, up and downs, but basically what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of people who have moved out of LA, who are not teaching other younger, eager to learn dominants their traits. And so now you just have a lot of dudes who just say they are dominant and are expected to be just given that title, accepted as that. And listen, I'm not trying to say that, a guy can't really do that, but what I'm trying to communicate is that there was a time where if someone was called a dom, you knew that they were a good player, that they had been experienced, and that theoretically on paper, they knew what they were doing. Now, that does not mean that they couldn't be abusive. That does not mean that they never had a bad scene. That does not mean that everything always was copacetic in every way, right? It just was an easier way to communicate, this is a good player and they are a good player because our community has seen them play, trusted their play, and given them this title, right? And so that was kind of how that is, right? Now, obviously, going back to the philosophy thing, there's a lot of people who are gonna hear exactly what I just said and be like, oh my God, it's just not that deep, da-da-da-da-da, There's a lot of men who resent this idea of having to learn from another dominant how to dominate people, They think that they can just say and do, and that's it. And just, I've talked a lot about this on here, but I've seen so many abuse situations happen in Los Angeles. And so many of them are by these dudes who say that they're dominants, who have never ever earned that title or tried to earn that title, but just call themselves that because they call themselves that, and they hurt people. And honestly, so many of the times where they've hurt people are mistakes in communication, or just they didn't know how to do the thing the right way. They weren't experienced enough in reading their partner. Oftentimes it's because they jumped right into a scene with a cute girl who says she was submissive and wanted him to dominate her. There's so many variables, right? But honestly, a lot of the common ground is that they rushed right in with inexperience. But they were confident enough for people to look at them and take them as, you know, these big dominants in the community. And in LA, it's really easy to do that because there's not a lot of a structure in the way that there once was, because a lot of the leaders are gone, right? And that's just kind of the big situation that we're currently in. Something I really wanted to talk about in this video was kind of, I mentioned in that video I made about sex and whether or not BDSM is always sexual, that there's like this, you know, wave of men who say that because they are sexually dominant, that they are doms. And you know, it's so interesting to me because I think maybe because I've been doing this for so long and that I've been kind of in these sort of spaces for so long, that like, I don't like BDSM. What I recognize, especially reading some of those comments, is that like BDSM really probably doesn't register in my mind the way that it does so many other people. Because to me, BDSM can be sexual, obviously, is sexual for like one of my partners, but it's so not that for me. I would say, God, like 90% of the time. I've had a lot of conversations with men who seem to present themselves very well. And, you know, when I'm trying to talk to a guy about what dominant means to them, I really want to know about the sort of things that they practice, you know, the kind of BDSM things that they do, and whether or not they're any good at it, right? And I've had so many conversations basically go, hey, I like your profile. I think you're really cute. You know, can you tell me what, you know, you being into BDSM means to you? And we spend a lot of time dancing around this point, which was the ultimate point, which is that to this guy, BDSM is just him being dominant to a woman in the bedroom, him degrading a woman in the bedroom, right? Him trying to give a woman an orgasm through X, Y, and Z fashion. Like, that's what it is. And I think and like, to me, that's like an aspect of BDSM, but I guess it's not what I'm predominantly seeking when I think of BDSM. I'm not thinking I want to have dominant, you know, I want to be submissive to a man sexually. I'm thinking I want to allow myself to escape and let go and feel safe exploring certain paraphilias with a guy who knows how to do that safely. That's how I process this stuff. And honestly, here's one of the things I wanted to talk about is that, you know, I get a lot of comments from women about how do you get into it and da-da-da-da-da. And like, I'm trying to formulate an answer. And honestly, in this environment, in this pandemic, I don't even know if I have like a great way to answer that question about how do you get in. But the one thing I will express to women who want to bottom for men is that this new sort of wave of this particular kind of guy calling himself a dominant, with that being said, you have to be very, very careful about who you bottom for. You really, truly do, because you can't really just trust that a guy knows what he's doing because he says he's a dom. You really can't. You really, really, really can't. You know? And it sucks to say that, because I would love to tell you that the BDSM community is mostly safe. I would love to tell you that, you know, the kind of men who wanna, you know, make you black and blue in a consensual way are always good people, but they're not. It's a very edgy, scary thing. And I think that it serves women very well, if they want to explore BDSM, to be incredibly patient and careful and hold off rather than jump in. Because I'm telling you right now, I would say 99.5 of the experiences that I've seen where people have gotten into shit, you know, it's been largely because they jumped in. It's been largely because they said, hey, whatever, I'm just gonna do it. Or I think that if I don't play with him now, I'm never gonna get to play with him. And it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out at all. You know, it doesn't work out because that dude, here's the thing. I'm gonna talk about this real fast because this is a vetting thing. And I feel like I really wanna talk to women in this video, so we're gonna talk to women. If you're a woman and you're interested in doing BDSM, I would really be wary of the men who are eager to do BDSM fast with you. I feel like I talk about my partner Nathan every time I do a BDSM video, but one of the things and I'll repeat this, I really appreciated about him was that when I came to him, fresh out of a vanilla relationship, eager to explore BDSM, and I said, hey, let's do the BDSM thing. And I, of course, especially just the headspace I was in when I met him, I was used to men being very excited at the prospect of having me in a compromising position, we'll say. And he was like, hey, I know you want to do this and I'm open to it, but I need to get to know you more. I need to get to know who you are, what your traumas are, what your boundaries are, so that we can sort of work around those things and I don't hurt you, that you have a positive experience. And so we didn't do stuff for a while. We didn't have sex, we didn't do kink. We went on a bunch of dates, normal dates, spent time with each other, did things with each other, got to know each other, and it was a really great time. And I hadn't had a lot of relationships like that where the guy was like, no, we're not fucking, I'm not doing BDSM with you, I'm not doing any of that. I want to spend time with you, I want to get to know you, but we're not doing that. You know, and if I ask him, this is going to sound really arrogant, but the way he likes to phrase it is, I had to earn his greatness, essentially. He doesn't say it that arrogantly, but he knows that he's good at what he does, and he wants to share it with people who he trusts, who, you know, he has an understanding of their boundaries. You know what I mean? And I think that that's a really good way of approaching it, because I've seen so many of these particular kinds of dominance, and you know, it's not always these new, you know, Christian Grey-esque type guys. Sometimes it is these established dudes who they just get really, really excited and jump right in with a girl who just doesn't know what she wants yet, is still figuring out what her boundaries are. And these are the kind of guys who will be very disappointed when they find out that you are experienced in BDSM. That's honestly, this is another video, but honestly, that's been an obstacle of mine with finding a dominant partner. I have, Nathan is not my dom. He's a top heavy switch and he dominates me, but he is not my dom. And he's very open to me having other dom partners. But you know, a lot of the people who have been interested in me being their submissive have really required me to essentially be kink monogamous to them. And that's not something that I can do. So that's been an obstacle. Especially because Nathan gives me the good shit. So like, why would I, you know, sacrifice that, honestly? But you know, another obstacle that I have is that I'm an experienced BDSMer, and there are unfortunately some men who just are not really excited by that. And for me, that's a red fucking flag, you know? But I think a bigger red flag is when you tell someone that you're inexperienced and they're excited by it. When you tell somebody that you're inexperienced, and instead of being hesitant, instead of saying, hey, you know what? I would really like to get to know you and understand what your boundaries are. Instead of that, they're like, hey, yeah, come over, let's do something. I think that that should be a red flag. And I understand that when you're new and you're eager, you're so excited, but trust me when I say that you are going to prefer holding off and getting to know somebody for a long period of time and doing stuff when you guys understand each other over the potential of you actually being abused. Because unfortunately, what I've seen is that a lot of times I'll see women jump into stuff, get a really bad experience, and then they never want anything to do with it again. You know, their bad experience ruins BDSM for them. So I want to encourage women to be hesitant. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to jump right in. And you know, if we weren't in a pandemic right now, one of the things that I would tell you to do if you're trying to start is just go to munches. Munches are basically just BDSM meetups at restaurants or bars. And you know, that is like one of the best places to go to be connected to the community and not actually do scenes or anything like that. Because the people that you'll meet in those spaces, that's like your kink family, you know? And if you're a woman, find other women, connect with other women, befriend other women, talk to them about who these doms are, what their history is, ask. That is the best piece of advice that I can give you. And you know, you can take everything with a grain of salt. We've talked about that before on this channel, but still, I think that if you're trying to get in, if you're just starting out, it would be a really good idea for you to start there. To start there with making friends, especially other women who are submissive, and go from there. You know, those relationships will be so valuable. I mean, so many of my friends are submissive women in Los Angeles and dominant women, just women in the community. You know what I mean? I have so many friends in the BDSM community, and they are friends. We used to go to karaoke all the time. Oh my God, I miss that so much. We used to go to karaoke constantly. But, you know, instead of jumping into these relationships with these men, befriend women. Befriend women, you know? Because sometimes with some of these guys, it's like, you know, you'll talk to them and they almost want to isolate you from these other women. They almost want to isolate you from talking to other people and measuring up your experiences. And that's also a red flag, you know? That is also a huge, huge, huge red flag, right? I think it's really unfortunate that, like, you know, this stuff is such a thing because, you know, I love BDSM is great. I think it's awesome. And I would encourage people who are curious about it to at least give it a try. But I don't know if I'm super, like, so before all of the quarantine stuff happened, I was totally like over the dungeons, just totally over it because there's just so much abuse, guys. I mean, just, and if not outright abuse, just like indifference to bad behavior, or, you know, people making excuses for people who do have bad behavior. And it's a bit much for me personally. And so I was really focused on, you know, towards, you know, the end of it, you know, doing our own sort of thing with the people that I know are good. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, that's still a toss up. That's not going to be free from abuse or shitty people, right? But, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say at the core of it is, you know, the friends you make, platonic friends, you know, the people that you share your interests, those are really important relationships in the community, more so than any random shitty bad dom, you know? Because there's so many of them, you know, so many of these dudes are that way, so many of them. So if you're really just like looking for someone to talk about BDSM with, to sort of even in some ways, you can do stuff with your friends. You know, a lot of people do BDSM stuff with their friends. You know, it's probably better for you to find that than to just trust some dude who presents himself the right way. And I think that the only kind of guys you should really be talking to are really men who are willing to go at your pace. Well, maybe your pace is quick. Well, I mean, here's the thing about BDSM. The communication, like, we like to really summarize it as like, well, we want to do that. You know, I want to be spanked, but I don't want this, There's so much more, guys. There's so much more. Like, for example, right? Growing up, I was spanked with a belt. And that was fairly traumatic for me. These days, when it comes to BDSM with my partner, I really don't want him to do stuff with belts. That's a fairly common boundary that a lot of people have. That's not something that I think I would have really known when I first met Nathan, but it's something that I now know about myself. It's something that I discovered in my process of exploring stuff with him. Don't want belts, right? it's important to have conversations about those traumas, about those boundaries that you really have, those little things that make it so that you're not quite as, you know, comfortable doing certain things. Like, it's important to talk about that. It's so important to talk about that. And you're probably not going to really get a chance to really talk about that, or even to know what your little weird triggers are if you're jumping right in to a scene with somebody. And anyone who's like eager to do that, like, to me, that's like the best sign of like a bad dom or just a shitty fake one. You know, when his BDSM is all about sex, that's a sign. You know, when his BDSM is something that, you know, he has to gaslight you into, when he's trying to tell you that if you were a real submissive, you would be doing this, and that, like, stop it. Like, those are, to me, the signs of bullshittery, you know? And so, yeah, I guess that's really what I had to say. I could talk about this forever, but it's hard for me to talk about it without being specific about certain people. But and LA is so small that I don't want to call people out, honestly. I've done enough of that on this channel. When I made my video about the problems with the BDSM community, I got so many messages from people who knew exactly who I was talking about. And oh my God, this just makes me want to die, just knowing. Oh my God. I mean, it worked out. I'm on good terms with most people, but yeah, yikes. So yeah, I'm gonna end it there. I think that there's nothing wrong with people just wanting to do certain BDSM stuff. I wish that we really reserved certain terms for certain types of people. There's a difference between aspiring to be dominant and being a dom, in my opinion. And so for me, it's always really, really important for me to understand which side of the fence the men I'm speaking to land on. But I don't think that either is more or less valid. There's just what's compatible with me personally. I think if you like being dominant in the bedroom and there are women that like you to do that, I think that that's amazing. For me personally, I need more than that. That's also fun. I'm also submissive sexually, but that's not really what personally for me is in my head when I think about doing BDSM with people. Because most men want to be dominant in the bedroom. That's not unique or special, in my opinion. It's the other shit that men who are dominant can do that I find fascinating and attractive. So yeah. Anyway, on that note, if you've made it through this entire video, please put this emoji in the comment box below. Everyone who puts the emoji in is just the sexiest, coolest, hottest, most amazing, most glamorous, most great, bestest, betterest person in the world. And that's just what it is, on period, sis. I'm sure that's what the kids on TikTok say. I'm still learning about what the kids are doing these days. So yeah, emoji in the comment section if you would like to be iconic. I'm sure you do. So yeah. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys next week. Right now you're looking at 2 videos you can watch if you'd like to continue to sip true tea right here on this channel. And in the corner, there's several ways you can send me a tip. Just like, if you just want to. You don't have to. No one has to send me a tip. I'm just saying it would be really nice. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.